What's going on? Malika here, host of new show in transformation or renaming Answering the Inner Call, formerly known as Feel Good the Podcast. I just wanted to share a quick story about the term and where the new title comes from, Answering the Inner Call. I want to shout out and give thanks to my coach Sam for challenging me to put more of myself out there and a story and a message that aligns truly with more of who I am. And that includes adding more depth to this platform. So Answering the Inner Call, long story short, there was a woo-woo bookstore. If you don't know what I mean by woo-woo, it's like spiritual. They sell crystals and different things like that. Autobiography of a yogi, those kind of books. I love them. I love those kind of stores. And there was a woo-woo bookstore not too far from where I lived. And I went in there one day and they used to have newsletters that had classes that they were offering or workshops. It was a physical location, so they would have like in-house workshops. And something about it just, intrigued me. And I started to wonder, like, what are those people doing? How do they get to teach classes here? And I had an interest in doing that. Well, I've had other experiences of teaching different types of content, different ages. And many, many moons ago, I was a Sunday school teacher, which is a whole other story because I had never even been to Sunday school, but it was at a church I loved, the only church I've really ever joined. Shout out to Hillside Chapel and Truth Center. And I was in ministerial school at the time, and I was asked to become a Sunday school teacher, and I was just like, I have no idea what that would even look like. I never went to Sunday school growing up. And so that was even answering a call right then. So that's a flashback. But what I found out, because I accepted, even though I was scared, even though I didn't know if I could do it, it was such a wonderful experience. I was working with first and second graders who I just loved, and they loved me. I was told by some of the parents that I was their favorite Sunday school teacher of their kids. And basically, I found out by saying yes to that I had a gift and an ability I didn't know I had, which was creating content. Ideas would just come when I was a Sunday school teacher, when I would work on whatever curriculum I was teaching for the month. So anyway, I asked someone, going back now, fast forwarding back to the woo-woo bookstore, I went to a staff member and asked, how does one go about getting to teach here or offer a workshop? And they said there was a person who organized their content and I would need to speak to her. This was at 2016, I'm pretty sure. So that person that I needed to speak to wasn't there that day. A couple months passed. I go back into the bookstore with a friend, looking around, and the lady that organizes the workshops was there. And immediately it's like my heart started racing a little bit. But I knew if I did not go over and talk to her that I would regret it. So I went over to her. That was like all I could muster, is just going over, and I introduced myself and told her I was interested in teaching a workshop there. And then she said, oh, okay. Well, what are you an expert in? Now, y'all, I had not gotten that far in my mind. I told you it took all that I had just to go over and tell her I was interested. I had not thought about steps B, C, D. So she asked me this question, and I looked at her blankly, and I said, I don't know. Now, mind you, I've studied, and at that point, it had been a number of years since that I had been in transformation trainings, classes, et cetera, but I didn't have like a modality or something specific that I considered myself an expert in that I wanted to necessarily teach. So I looked at her blankly. I said, I don't know. And then she asked me something else, and that answer was, I don't know. And so she was so kind and gracious with me. She took out a piece of paper and she did an outline, and she said, okay, well, we need a title. And at the 10-minute mark, what do you imagine would be happening? What would you want to be happening in your workshop? Let's say it's 90 minutes. At the 30-minute mark, what would be happening? And then in the closing, what do you want them to take away and to go away with? So she gave me this format, and she said, and if you get back to me by Sunday, and that day was Friday, then I'll include you in the next newsletter. We'll put you on our schedule. And their newsletter was quarterly. So this was like winter time. So it would be like spring or late winter, like February, when the class would actually happen. So I told her, I said, okay, I will get back to you by Sunday. As I made already pretty clear, I had no clue what I was going to be talking about. But when I tell you, I had not even made it to my car before I started getting the creative inspiration. And the way it was coming to me was auditorily. I was hearing content coming. And it was coming so fast and so quickly, I needed to drive home and I didn't want to forget anything. Have you all experienced that before, where it's either a dream or you have a really good idea, and if you don't write it down, it becomes real vague and you try to get back to it and you can't quite reach it? Like, what was that again? I didn't want that to happen. I didn't have a lot of time. And so on my drive home, I'm recording a voice memo of the inspiration I'm getting. And by Sunday, I had an outline. I had more content than I had time for in the 90 minutes. And the name of that workshop that I was receiving, like I said, I was receiving inspiration. And along with that inspiration of the content came the name Answering the Inner Call. So with that story, I think there's a couple things I'll say very briefly, and I'll get into this more later. But answering the inner call usually is going to come on the edges of what we think we are capable of. Usually answering the inner call can scare the hell out of you, and it requires courage. And that is why I'm playing around with this, but I really think that this audience that comes to listen to this, that we are freaking gladiators. Maybe not by brawn. You can't look at us and tell how mighty we are, but we are gladiators of heart. And because it takes courage to live with an open heart in this crazy at times world that we are living in, especially right now, it seems real wild. So anyway, that is the background and the story of answering the inner call, and it connects me back to this workshop, and it also connects me back to doing this podcast, which I'll get into at another time. So I love the meta, the micro and the macro of answering the inner call. And I invite you to, and we'll explore much more of calls that I've answered and calls that I haven't answered. There's been a lot of both of those. And it's an invitation also for you to explore your life conscientiously and walking the spiritual path in a way that often isn't discussed, but I think is a big part of it. All right, signing off for now. Much love until the next time. Bye. Oh, and please, as I'm in this transition, please do me a favor. If you've liked what you heard, please subscribe. Please give me a rating, as it helps with the whole algorithm thing. And leave a comment. I will shout you out in one of my other episodes if you leave a comment, which I appreciate because I'll read it. All right, cheers.